So this is my screencast for the ORMI CA2. And for this I worked with Michael and Tom. I'm just going to go through one or two things that I worked on myself during the CA. So I'm going to start with the chat room class. So it's just a basic class. It's just basically the chat room is made up of the name of the chat room, the password for it, and then an array list of client ORMIs for the users. So the methods here are pretty basic. So just get name, get password, set name, set password. And then there's add user. So for add user, what we do is pass in the client ORMI callback object and add that to the array list. And then there's a getter for that as well. So the chat room store basically is a hash map. The key is a string just with the chat room name, and then the value, which is the chat room object itself. So some of the methods we have here is the add chat. So you pass in, when you're adding chat room, you pass in the chat room name and the password. So first, before you add it, we check if the chat room already exists with that name. If it doesn't, it allows you to add it. The next one is get users, so returning all the users that are in the chat room. So basically you just pass in the chat room name again. It returns the array list with all the users in it as well. Adding a user is sort of the same as adding a chat room. So once again, you pass in the chat room name, the password for it. But this time you pass in the client ORMI again. So if the chat room exists, it will then check if the password's right. If the password's right, it will add it will get the array list of the users from that chat room and add that object to the array list. So deleting chat is basic as well. You just pass in the chat room name. If that chat room exists, it will delete it. If not, it won't. So I'm going to go on to explain how we display the messages in the chat rooms as well. So in the user ORMI store, we have the send message. So basically you pass in the chat room name, the username is passed in, and the message is passed in. So using the chat room name, we get so the get users method is used to return an array list of all the client ORMIs from the chat room using the chat room name. A loop is then created so that for every user, for every client ORMI, it's going to use an open method to print out the username and the message that was sent. So this is basically display the username and the message that was sent by that user to each user that's in that chat room. So I'm going to demonstrate this at the very end of the video. I'm going to first go through how I hashed and salted the passwords. So I'll open up the password class first. So in the password class, I have three methods. The first one is get next salt. This basically returns a byte array of 16 bytes, with 16 random bytes. The next one is the hash method. So this returns a byte array as well. So you pass in the password in the form of a character array. You pass in the salt that was generated previously as well. And this returns. So this basically uses the password and the salt. It attaches the salt to the end and returns a byte array containing the hash password and the salt together. The last one is basically a special password. So again, you pass in the password in the form of a character array, the salt again, and the expected hash. So when a user logs in, this will be used to make sure the password matches exactly using the hash and the salt. So it will loop through every It'll loop through every byte in that array to make sure that each one matches the one that was created by the password inputted by the user and the one that should be expected. So it's going to loop through every single character in that and check that they all match. Once it reaches the one that doesn't, it'll return false, so the user won't be allowed logged in. If they all match, it'll return true, and the user will be then logged in. So the database, I'm going to show you how it's used. So basically, when a user is added, they pass in the username and the password. It will, first of all, it'll check the user doesn't already exist. So it'll select all the users from the table that has that username. If any exist, it'll return a false, so the user won't be allowed to add, so they'll be prompted to create a new username. Otherwise, they'll be allowed to create their account. So a new password class will be made, password object, sorry. It'll create a new pass and a new salt and a new hash using the password that was inputted. And then the next bit is me basically just converting those byte arrays to strings. I know this probably isn't the best way to do it, which is the way I came across online. So basically, it's just me converting those two byte arrays into strings, so that would allow me to insert it into the database itself. To the next line, then it's just a command to insert the password, the username, the password, and the hash and salt into the database. So login is pretty similar again. A username and the password is inputted. So it's going to get the password, the hash, and the salt from the table for that username. It's then going to store it's going to retrieve the hash and the salt from the database for that user. It's going to create an expected hash by hashing that password that was inputted to log in and the salt that was retrieved from the database. It's then going to check that hash with the hash that was already in the database to make sure they both match up. If they match up, logged will be set to true, the user will be logged in. If not, it'll be returned as false. And the next one is basically just a delete user method. It's just deleting the user using the username. So I'm going to show the database as well, just to show you how I have it stored. So basically I have two users here, so it's Ryan and Michael. So the password is just pass. The password for both of them is pass, but as you can see, the hash and the salt for each of them are completely different. I know in the real world, if you're using hash and salt, you wouldn't store the password as well because it leaves it open and vulnerable to attacks. But just for the sake of this, I'm just using it to show you. So I'm going to run through how the messages were sent in the chat rooms as well. So I'm going to run two clients and log in as two different people. So I'm going to create a chat room. So we'll call it chat and then pass just to be easy. And I'm going to join it from this user. So chat and pass. And I'm going to do the same on the other one. So chat and pass. So when I enter in a message on one chat room, it's displayed on both sides. So this is where the notify me is used. So when it retrieves all the client ORMIs from each chat room, it then prints out the username and the message to all users in that chat room. And then it works from the opposite side as well. So I think that's it, pretty much done. Thanks.